Hello, everybody, and welcome to the entertainment headquarters, and welcome to another retro classic movie show. My segment on the channel dedicated to classic movies, anywhere from the 1970s all the way up to the early 2000s. And joining me is my amazing co-host from the Metal Tavern Radio, Mr. DJ Anubis.
What's up?
And this is a very special film to me. It's one of my favorite films from this particular director. And it's also a film that is, very much liked by not just me and my co-host, but we decided to bring along for the ride two amazing guests that also enjoy this film. The first one is Mr. Anthony Jordan of Anthony Jordan's Movies and Gaming. And we cannot miss out Mr. Sexual Chocolate himself, Mr. Jedi Granville of Mr. Jedi Granville Productions. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us.
Yes. So the film in question is my pick, because if you do not know, every month I will pick a movie, get together, review it. The following month will be Mr. DJ Anubis's pick. So for my pick, I picked none other than James Cameron's classic and one of his best movies, in my opinion. Oh, that's the right. Where's it gone? The Abyss.
It's Abyss. A bitch. That's right.
Yeah, The Abyss. So this is where we have to talk about. So the Terminator. Then he stopped it with Aliens, and now we enter the Abyss. So we'll start off with how we always start off this thing. My co-host, Mr. DJ Anubis, can you remember your first time seeing the Abyss?
Probably would have been 3 or 4 years after. Wasn't something I saw in the theaters or anything. I mean, the only thing closest at the time, because, around the time they put The Abyss out, like there was a couple other films called Leviathan and Deep Star 6 that came out as well. So there's all these like sea creature type films that were out there. But, Cameron's was a little bit different than those two. Those two were like mainly in the horror area, where this is a little bit more sci-fi. Crazy. But when I finally did watch it a few years later, I was like pleasantly surprised, because the more I watched it, even when I rewatched it the other night, it has it kind of starts off, it's almost eerie the way it starts off. You think it's going to be some sort of like supernatural or UFO phenomenon type thing, and then it just becomes like sort of like a heartwarming movie about faith, hope, and love in the end. So like I really enjoyed that ride of emotions that you deal with as you go through there. And then you have wonderful performances there. Michael Biehn is amazing in this. He's crazy as hell. But just, you see some other characters that are not, we saw them later on in their career, that this is in the infancy of their career. So like Chris Elliott and guys like that.
Oh, definitely. 100%. I also think this is one of Ed Harris's best performances.
Even if he doesn't like to talk about it.
He doesn't like talking about it. But for me, I think he is a very much underrated actor. There's a lot of his movies I really enjoy. Like, I like this, of course. I like The Truman Show. I liked him. He was in
Rock. He was great in The Rock.
Yeah, he was also great. Enemy of the Gate.
Radio was another good one.
Yes. So he's done a lot of amazing work. As for the two films that you've mentioned, the Leviathan, I've seen that one, and the other one, I think it's a Deep Star 6.
Yes.
I haven't seen that one.
They're both worth watching.
I've definitely seen the Leviathan, but I haven't seen Deep Star 6.
From what I think, the fact that like you had these like underworld or theme movies coming out around the same time, from what I understand, a few years prior, it was when the Titanic was explored with a submersible for the first time, and that's what kind of kicked this off.
Yeah, and this might have been like this as well, which obviously later on James Cameron eventually brought us the Titanic film.
What the initial genesis for the idea for this movie was, Cameron read an article years prior about a diver who used this experimental fluid to dive deeper than anyone dived before, which, as we'll get to when we go to the movie, you could, yeah.
You can see that, yeah.
You can also see with this film the inspiration for the Liquid Terminator, which would come a few years later.
Yeah, 100%. Yes. But Anthony Jordan, can you remember your first time seeing The Abyss?
A couple years ago was the first time. This was one I kind of knew about, but it was never at any of the local video stores. It was never on TV, so I just didn't have access to watch it. And a couple years ago, I was looking for new movies to buy and strolling through eBay, and I'm like, you know what? I haven't seen The Abyss yet, and I typed it in, found this copy here, ordered it, and I loved it. It's a great movie. Like Anubis said, it starts out one thing, becomes another, takes you through a whole bunch of emotions, and it was even interesting from a certain standpoint to see Michael Biehn in a James Cameron movie where he plays a different type of character, because he's normally the hero in a James Cameron movie, and in this case he's against type, and it quickly became one of my favorites, like top 3 James Cameron movies.
Mr. Jedi Grande.
Well, I actually had the pleasure of seeing this film in its original run back in '89. And the funny thing is, I saw a trailer during the Super Bowl, and when we see this particular moment, which we'll get into, it's like, oh God, I got to see this film. I got to see what this movie's about, So I got to see it, and one of the things when watching it, you could feel that there was a lot of, how I say, love and whatever from Cameron putting this, because this was something that he had in the back of his mind to make. This is his first film, I think. Well, not his first film, but like the second film where he truly wrote it himself and pretty much devised a way of saying, because he is someone who loves the water. Unlike myself, I'm terrified of water, but I feel that when you watch, you see where he's trying to go with it. And this is one of the reasons why, because when later on, when I saw the movie and I saw something later in the magazine talking about there's some things in this film that you did not see that were left out. And I was kind of like, what are you talking about? It seemed like this was but then when we really watched the film in the theatrical cut, you realize like there are moments that seems like there's more to this, and eventually, thankfully, I got to see the original, cut of this film, and it made me realize like, wow, this makes much more sense, and it hammers in some things that you didn't know were there, and it's like, this is why I say I love this movie, because it's such a grandstand. I mean, there is a lot of stuff to take in, but it really grabs and holds on to you if you're looking at it from a philosophical or theological kind of way. It depends on the viewer. But for me, it was definitely all those things.
It's not like if you were to compare it to the extended cuts of Aliens and Terminator 2, where, don't get me wrong, the stuff in those films is great. It's also not really missing in the theatrical cut, but as me and you had talked about, because you asked if I seen the theatrical cut, I said no, because from what I've read and understand is that the extended cut actually fixes plot holes that were left in the theatrical.
Exactly. And that's the thing right there. It's like you see it. I mean, it's like I say, when you see it in the theater, you don't really know it, because that's you going in blind. You don't know what's going on. But after analyzing and find out there was something left out, it's like, I'm hoping that I'll see that one day. And look, trust me, I went to see the final cut of it until like I think it was '96 until I would see that. So yeah.
Well, since you mentioned 1996, I remember the very first time I seen The Abyss. It was over at a family member sleepover where he had just bought his first massive big screen television. And we were having a sleepover and he had bought The Abyss on Blu-ray, not Blu-ray, on DVD, not even DVD, like something like that.
I think Laserdisc.
I think it might have been Laserdisc, and then I hadn't seen it, and that was the very first time, and I was blown away by it. And for me personally, this is probably the closest I'm going to say to James Cameron doing a film that is on the same kind of style and storytelling, in the most, I guess, Steven Spielberg-ish film in terms of look, story, in terms of sound, character. For me, this could have been a Steven Spielberg film. It feels like a story he would tell, especially with what you said, where it's about hope and coming together and stuff like that. That's kind of a story element he would add in one of his films.
Especially
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Especially where up to this point, his movies hadn't exactly ended on the most hopeful note.
True.
Yes.
And can I just say that this is at a time where I feel Cameron wrote better, in my opinion. I mean, I feel he had a better grasp at dialogue and perception of how you perceive characters and situations. I mean, exactly. He shows things that are tough. He shows things that are real world, real life kind of ordeals, But to me, he was just capturing, especially in this film, what it feels like to be in those dire situations. But let you know that, as it was mentioned before, hope is still there. Hope can be still transcended into something, more, knowing that you have to go through all these things.
Mm-hmm. So, with that said, let's get cracking and talk a bit about The Abyss. So, The Abyss is a 1989 American science fiction film, as we've mentioned, written and directed by James Cameron, and stars Ed Harris, and it stars Mary Elizabeth. I'm not even going to attempt to say her
Mastrantonio.
That's her.
Okay, yeah, that's her.
And Michael Biehn. When an American submarine sinks in the Caribbean, a U.S. search and rescue and recovery team work with an oil platform crew racing against Soviet vessels to recover the boat. Deep in the ocean, they encounter something unexpected. So I like the beginning of this movie, and I like the creativeness behind the beginning of the movie. So you see the USS Montana, which is, of course, it's an Ohio class submarine. It's like scouring the ocean, and I love the darkness. I love how you have the big opening with the big abyss sign. And then it kind of pans in, and then you're basically in like the darkness of the deep ocean. And then the next thing you see is the submarine go underwater, moving forward, and then as it's scanning around, they pick up this unidentified object, like projecting through the ocean. They decide to pursue it. They kind of decide to investigate it, and they just assume it's the Soviets, it's the Russians, it's some sort of spy thing. That then all of a sudden it starts to move at an incredibly fast speed underwater, which no other vessel at that time or to this day still could go deep dive in the water at that speed. And one of the amazing scenes is as the subs, piloting through the ocean, you see like the flashes of light and like this object, and then before you know it, it's crashing into the side of the cliff, like the underwater rocks, and like the cliffside that leads towards like the trench. And then eventually they realize there's nothing they can do. They're too deep. they can't float, they can't, eject where they can float back up to the surface, and then basically there's no going back, so they end up crashing into like the end of where this ravine is, this deep abyss, and you just see like the floating buoy like
Yeah.
flashing.
We have to
Then,
remind ourselves this is at a time when the Cold War was still a dominant thing at this time. I mean, it hadn't been pretty much, discontinued, but this is why it was so well thought up, because you notice how they mentioned about the Reds don't have anything as fast like this. They don't have anything. This is that paranoia that you know this was going on, because you see the captain, even though he hears in his XO, hears the sound of this thing, going through the water. It's like, what the hell is this? And he's trying to keep kind of close to the cliff so they won't really know whatever this thing is, won't notice. But see, that's the paranoia of how we as human beings, or at least different countries, different sides, portray one another. We think like, you're the enemy, but I'm not the enemy, but you are the enemy. It's like we have this mindset of being as human beings. And this is the thing about this movie that I love so well. It dives, no pun intended, dives deep into psychological mythos of how human beings act around one another when it comes to being distrustful or anything like that. I know that was kind of campy when I said that. I didn't want to say that, but it's like that's the only way I can express it.
I have no idea what you're talking about, Warland.
Yeah.
But basically, after the sub is now submerged and crashed into this location. This is when the naval forces of the United States get together, and it's like a race against time between them and the Soviets to recover information, or at least the warheads, because they know that because this sub hasn't been totally exploded or destroyed, it's wrecked on the bottom, the ocean floor. It means if the Soviets send in a dive team or what, they could recover American warheads and also any sort of crucial information that they would have, and it would give them an advantage against the US. So this is when they send down this crew. So you're introduced to two characters. You were introduced to Ed Harris's character, and you were introduced to
the
Mary
queen bitch
Elizabeth
of the universe.
Yes.
That's what they
So he is called Brigman, and she is Dr. Lindsay Brigman. So both of these were married, or are still married, and are in like a bitter, I guess, divorce. She is a doctor who developed a technology, some diving equipment or the platform, and he works for this huge conglomerate, I guess, drilling oil company that have access and ownership of her technology that she co-created. And I'm assuming that's the reason they chose to get divorced, because it was like a conflict of interest. Like she left because of her morals, he stayed for the money.
Well, it's more of I put it like this, is more of a, like, she's more of a suit, where he's more of a roughneck in a sense. And I mean, but the thing about it is, that's the thing that brings people together. They're different sides of one another.
For him, it was just as much about the adventure of being down there and doing this for the first time.
Yeah.
Mm.
Opposites
So
attract.
So that is the giant drilling platform, which obviously travels deep underwater from one location to the other.
Deep core.
And of course, once that arrives to the location, Bud, aka Virgil, ain't happy that he's going to be reintroduced to his wife. The mega bitch from hell and all this stuff. And she's not happy that she's, being reintroduced to this prick of an ex-husband. But they have to come together for the greater good, which is to rescue the technology of the warheads from this submarine. And this is where you're introduced to a host of other characters. So you have these two gentlemen.
Yeah, Benny and Cat.
Yes. So I really like these characters. And then
The
we are
one
all
with the rat did really aggravate me at one point in the film.
I can understand.
Oh, he's the one that like gets everybody in trouble. He
It's
says
like,
Snoopy,
dude,
Snoopy,
I get
Snoopy.
it's your pet and you love your pet, but you don't put the whole operation in danger for a rat.
Well, I like that
now.
when Mrs. Brigman, she's like, "Hey, did you test your rat for any kind of diseases?" So she was basically alluding to he's the one with the disease and the rat's in trouble.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Well, you see, I don't know how I would feel if it was my Logan or Luna or
Well, I mean, hey, look, you love him that much because you see that one scene where he has it in a plastic bag and he almost gets crushed, and it's like, dude, I mean, would you do that? But your loved ones. So I like a little.
yeah. And then of course you have this lovely lady.
Yeah, Midnight. I think it's Midnight. Yeah,
Now I love Midnight.
She was
she's
a fun character.
she
She was
was.
a fun character. Like I really, really do like Midnight. I'm not gonna lie.
Mhm.
Like,
But
it probably would have ruined the film for me if she got killed.
Yeah. I mean, there's certain characters in this film that you say you hope they've stayed there, but it's like, thankfully she was still on, through the entire story. So it's like,
Also,
yeah,
yeah,
this film, a fun fact, Ed Harris took his diving training so seriously for this film. By the time filming started, he was almost a professional level diver.
yeah,
the thing is that's one thing I will, despite what people think of the modern James Cameron era.
Craig Martin.
One thing I'll give about James Cameron, whether you like his newer stuff or don't, the technology he creates, the attention to detail he puts into all of his craftsmanship of his films, you cannot deny it. Like, for example, when he did the Titanic, he had that giant rig that looked like the end of the ship, that was fully functional, that had all the detailings of the designage from the original Titanic. That's true attention to detail.
Yeah.
And when the rig lifted up and people were falling off it, the stunt men and all, you cannot deny like the work he puts into his movies, whether you like him or don't.
Here's what's kind of funny when you think about his attention to detail. The underwater scenes for this were filmed in a containment center at an abandoned nuclear power plant in South Carolina, and it was
Mm-hmm.
just millions of gallons of water, and no one, especially the hyper detail focused James Cameron, thought we're going to have this huge tank of stagnant water, and algae started to build up, which made it impossible to film. So they decided to use chlorine, only they used so much chlorine it would burn skin on contact.
And turn
I,
some of the actors' hair
Yeah,
like literally blonde in a sense. Yeah.
and
yeah.
even like when
And
they initially started filming, the containment vessel broke, pouring all the water out. So they had to hire dam experts to come in and repair it. Like, this was not a fun movie to make.
I mean,
And
even
since you
Cameron said
mentioned it,
himself.
Walt,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
Go ahead.
So since you mentioned this character, Walter, just for you.
Yes. I mean, that's got to be one of the scariest moments in the film if you think about it. I mean, you really do. But no, before we go further, but Cameron even said himself before they got started, he told his crew, told his cast, said, "This is probably going to be the toughest shoot you'll ever be on in history." And if you really think about it, because even himself years later, he said this was probably the most grueling filming that he's ever done, because I mean, look at, like, say, the Titanic, you feel like, okay, that was tough, but he said this was the toughest because all the story is mostly underwater, and water is a difficult element to film in, around, over, under. It's difficult to do this.
The cast and crew would call the production the abuse.
Yes, they this. I don't know if you ever heard this. You probably heard this, Anthony. They made these little like cue cards or signage saying, like what you mentioned before, the abuse. Some of them said condescending, or this shoot or son of a bit abyss, stuff like
I know,
that.
I know there was one point during filming where I forget whether he was driving from the hotel to the set or from the set to his hotel. Ed
Mhm.
Harris just had to pull over and he had to just start crying uncontrollably because of how rough the shoot was.
Yes. But, we're just at the beginning of this movie, so generally what happens next is we're then introduced to Lieutenant Hiram Coffey,
Coffee,
played by Michael, obviously Bean. Him and
legend.
he's of his Navy SEALs. Basically, he's put on a mission to, the 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 crew of the of from the drill site
Deep core.
now have to, from the deep drillers, have to work with the Navy SEALs to do recovery in the submarine. But during the conversation, you find out that there is this, they've all been through these deep dive training, but there is this condition that you can develop if you don't, pass all the tests. In according to Coffey, every single one of his Navy SEALs have passed this test and all going to develop this deep water psychosis. And then there's this one particular scene which I knew once I seen that scene, oh, this is going to get good with this character. There's this scene where they're preparing the equipment and you hold
Yep.
Your mic's giving out.
and his hand starts to shake and give it, and straight away, boom, he's obviously clearly he's going to have this deep water psychosis.
Foreshadowing.
There's a lot of that in this film.
Yeah,
Well,
foreshadowing shit is about to go down.
If you see how this plays between the drillers and the Navy SEALs and how it plays out, there's a movie in 1998 called Armageddon that does something quite similar to that, only it's in space.
Yeah.
Yes.
Steve Buscemi's character. Yeah, I remember that.
That it's a very, but obviously it must be a similar balance between the ocean and space and what psychosis is and different things that you can develop.
Well, they both deal with pressure if you think about it. I mean, the pressure of the ocean is one thing. Then outside with no air, in deep space, like that's just as bad. So it's like, no-win situations.
Yeah. So, Anthony, do you want to carry on with some of the plot after this point?
Once we get introduced, we get some more foreshadowing. Like they use the rat to demonstrate the breathable liquid. And from what I understand, that was actually practical, and that rat was actually breathing it. The fluid was real, although they didn't use it for a later scene. We get introduced to the various characters. We get, as mentioned, to see the dynamic between Ed Harris and Mary Elizabeth, and the recovery operation to recover the nuke. Where, again, this was very well shot, and I know a lot of it was miniatures, but they go inside the sub, they recover the nuke, but it does become apparent there's more going on here, and then we find out a hurricane's on its way, and it's about to make things exponentially worse, and you're going to see quickly why the moment they knew a hurricane was on the way, everyone should have been evacuated.
There is one scene when when they go into the deep sub and they're going round and you see then once you go through the bulkhead and you see just the equipment, you then start to see the naval bodies of the poor navymen. That's imagine when you're a kid in 1997 and you're watching a big screen. This made me shit my pants. It really creeped me out as a kid. That
especially that shot right there, and I'm wondering
when you see the crabs crawling around the body and coming near his mouth and stuff.
My grandfather was a submarine man during World War II. Because of it, to his dying day, he was actually claustrophobic.
Hmm.
And that's
Yeah.
kind of interesting you say that because James Cameron is known for not having any kind of claustrophobia at all. That's why he's told many stories about being inside these tubes and stuff like that. And if you watch this film here specifically, it's like a lot of claustrophobia. Even if you think about Alien, that moment where Bishop is in that tube going down it, I'm like, dude, I don't see how anyone can do that. I couldn't do that, you know. But
Well, not being funny, my fat ass couldn't have fitted down that tube. I'd already
Oh,
been stuck.
all four of us would have gotten stuck.
I was gonna say we all get stuck at shit. So,
We would look like the fucking human centipede.
We'd be
yeah.
we'd all be stuck in there until the plant blew.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because of pressure, you know, cloggage. You know, but anyway.
Yes. So, would you like to continue, Anthony, or would you like somebody else have a go?
I'll do it a little more. Like, we have an incident when the hurricane hits, and this rig is actually partially controlled by a crane above the surface, and the wind causes the crane to break and crash down, and we do get a great tense sequence because it's like this thing is gonna hit us, only we don't know where it's gonna hit us and how much damage it's going to do. And this scene, you do feel the tension because you know it's coming, but the water's gonna slow it down, but it's still gonna do the damage. And it hits and does the damage, and then we get the part with the rat where the guy, rather than getting his rat out of there to begin with, keeps it with him, puts it in a Ziploc bag, bites down on it, and then he jumps back to get it, which causes one of the submersible rigs to actually destroy the door and flood parts of the ship. So we just get a nice chain reaction of things getting worse. Now they're stuck underwater, low power, limited air during a hurricane where they know they're not going to be extracted anytime soon.
Yes. So, the whole thing with the rat, which caused basically this chaos to come soon, really was frustrating. But it was also quite funny. Because, you know, if you were saving a baby or your kid or your best friend, but a fucking rat.
Well, the thing is,
Like,
it's one of those things where you feel like Ed Harris should have told him, like, okay, you have the rat down here, but keep it in its cage in its quarters.
Like it's cute and all, but you're about to kill people.
Again, this goes back to what I said before. We as human beings are some very strange, very unusual species, and we do some unorthodox kind of thing. And Hippie was no different. He's somebody who just, you know, he's doing what he's doing, who feels is best warranted in what he's doing right now, you know, and it's kind of the same with some of the reasons why the the Navy guys do what they do, because they believe when they see something or reform that they see that Lindsay saw something, automatically this is why I say I love this story. It's like it's a domino effect. Like what Anthony said, it's affecting everything else, and this is the reason why things happen the way they do.
And like everyone, I should say, even like the frustrating parts, everyone acts in a very believable way.
So, do you want to carry on the story, Walter?
I can do that. Yes. Like I say, after all the crash, you know, let me say they're underwater, they're stuck there, they can't get out. You know, I mean, and Lindsay is informing that eventually the heaters I should say the heaters are out anyway. It's going to get cold, like it's going to get like below freezing, you know, because down in the water, down 2 miles, 3 miles down, it's going to feel like the North Atlantic. But anyway, I mean, like the Arctic. But anyway, she's trying to get some power cells going to where it can kind of delay the inevitable of them, freezing and run out of air. Then she encounters two of these NTIs, as we come to find out.
Yes.
And it's a beautiful moment, I mean, and I have to bring this up too. This is something I think is overlooked sometimes. This is probably one of Alan Silvestri's best scores in my mind.
Yes.
He's really brings home the emotion, the action, the drama for this film. And when you see that moment where she reaches up and touches one of them, it's just like, I love how the music, plays in here, but during that time, like I say, she tried, and I gotta say, she is not quick. These things are fast. They are super fast in water. She's trying to take a photo of these things, and it's like once they go, it's like bam, and then another one comes around. It's like, I'm like, you're that distracted, but that's human nature. We can't, be that quick. But she tries to convince everyone, both, Coffee, the crew, everyone that she saw something, and this moment where her and Bud, Ed Harris's character, are talking. We've seen earlier this banter that they have, as people who are on, of course, of divorce. It's almost like something like this is bringing them back together because they're slow. She's talking to him more, like very, not so much emotional, but caring, getting you to understand and not being forced to you, And I feel like it's funny how these events are leading to, and this is what's so strange about this film. The basic story is like we've got underwater aliens down here, but what's the narrative? It's like showing that love still conquers a lot of things, even in traumatic time. And I love that moment between Ed Harris and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio speaking, and it's just like, because he's trying to say, you say it was more to this, you say it's all these things, and it's just, like I say, it's just a beautiful moment. But to continue
Don't
on,
forget when she was in the sub, she seen like something fly by,
yeah,
like this shocking light, but then she sees like an image, and she just doesn't know what it is. But she knows that, I think deep down she knows it's not from the planet Earth. I think she knows it's extraterrestrial,
and that's the
can't prove it.
Yeah, well, see, that's the question there too. We don't know how long these NTIs have been down here. They either been down there for like maybe 50 years, maybe longer, maybe just about a week. We don't really know, but they've been down there. So
yes. And then obviously things get even crazier because suddenly the submersible, it suddenly gets scanned, and they know something's approaching it, but they don't know what it is. You've also got Coffee's acting crazy. He's starting to lose his shit, basically. Because he's now starting to give in to the psychosis.
But that one scene where you see him cutting himself, mutilating himself, I'm like, yeah, this dude's he's about to lost it.
And don't forget, earlier on, even though they were down, he managed to get the keys and get like the launch codes for the warheads.
Right.
And then obviously there's a scene that happens before the next one where this entity starting to approach the ship. The underwater rig and stuff, while they're trapped there under the water. When suddenly different things start to happen, like the blinking lights, there's like people don't know what's going on, and then suddenly you see something. And like Anubis mentioned, this was for me the first time we see like that water effect that looks like the liquid metal, which you would use later on. Like you said, I think it was Anthony, James Cameron's obsessed with water.
Yes.
It's like he's got this affinity to the ocean. The proof's in the water, literally. The bits. Titanic, Avatar. And even though it's not water based, T2 features a Terminator that has the liquid nitrogen. So really, it's like liquid metal
Actually,
water.
believe like because he was already like in the back of his mind planning T2 that like this scene was actually he treated it as a test to see if that liquid metal Terminator idea could work, and it was even written in such a way that if it didn't work, they could have cut it out without you noticing it. And as great and memorable as of a scene as it is, you can see that if you cut it out, the overall plot loses nothing.
True.
Yes.
And I should say
Oh,
that this effect was done by Industrial Light and Magic, who would do the T1000 metal effects in T2.
yes. So then, obviously, eventually it all comes clear what these lights are, what these strange happenings are on the ship, when eventually we are introduced to our first fully, I guess, visual of what's going on, and that is this.
The pseudopod, yes.
Yes. So, and then the fact that it started off as like it looked like a long tentacle, like a tentacle. Then it began to transform and match in their faces, and then they start to smile. It begins to smile, but then someone decides to spoil the fun.
Yep. Good old coffee.
It's like clear the thing's just trying to communicate in some primitive way.
Mhm.
Yes, and he ends up getting the axe and bang, cutting the communication, and then the water just collapses on the floor.
Mhm.
And this is when you see the other signs of him. Basically, he's starting to lose himself even more.
Yeah, I mean,
So
this because you see when he saw, like I say, when he saw when I well, he saw it, like I say, he saw, but he tells his other uh, Navy SEAL opponent, it went straight for the warhead, and they think it's cute, So he goes to where his room is. He gets a bag, and he's got a, pretty
yeah,
much a beefed up, machine gun, and it lets you know, like I say, when he's telling them this, he's like, we have no way of warning the surface. It's like, this is an individual that I think is so hardwired into thinking the worst of who is there, who's not, who's your friend, who's your enemy. And it's
He's so hardwired to the point where he's literally committing court-martial worthy offenses.
true.
oh yeah. So Anubis, would you like to take on to the next part of this movie?
So where are we at? Just when the water creature appears?
Yes. And then Coffee's like totally losing his shit.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm trying to remember because I don't want to get out of order. Because there's a moment where so Coffee he's taking the warhead. He's figured he's going to try to hit the NTIs with it. He's thinking they're tied into Russian technology somehow or something. But obviously, Mrs. Bregman's telling Bud that these are smart, intelligent creatures, but they look like machines, but they're actually not. They're kind of like jellyfish in some ways, in the way that they move around, but they're very fast. But anyway, Coffee's like attempting to go and take one of the subs and go down and use a nuke on them. And that's when the Brigmans take chase. And this is actually kind of the first part of where you start to see like what Walter was talking about earlier about the bonding between the Brigmans, how they're kind of repairing themselves because you get into this massive like underwater sub fight with Coffee. And again, there's this moment, and this is why I can really give Cameron credit because as much as we've watched the first half of this film, we know that Coffee's like lost his mind, like he's not right. But there's that moment where he's hanging over the cliff of the trench in a sub, and it's him facing Mrs. Brigman because she's in the front cockpit of her sub. and his breaks free and he starts to fall, but they both put their hands up. Like it's like you still see the humanity there. Like she doesn't want him.
Yeah.
Yes,
She doesn't want him to die. But he just ends up he can't do anything because he's already kind of set his fate. As far as
I do like that, like they did it where he wasn't a true villain, and it was that he was suffering from that psychosis.
Yeah,
because he wasn't really a villain. He was just a guy who he was sent there to do a job.
You
He
can
tried
really
to fulfill his job, and then suddenly the psychosis hits him, and he has just a change of judgment or a confusion, and it just he's not doing it out of malice. Like you say, even what he's trying to do, even though he's batshit crazy at this point, he thinks that the ATIs are in cahoots with the Soviets, and in his mind, right, if I set a warhead off, I'm saving my country, and I'm doing this to be, to help my people. So in his mind, he's still trying to do the right thing, or what he thinks is the right thing, but obviously we know it's not true that the Soviets and the ATIs are connected.
I have to really say this. That's the thing about. I think you bring up a good point about that. I think you said it, but I think he said it. But I think that's the thing. There's no real villain in this picture. I think the villain, in a sense, is just
the darker side of human nature.
Yeah, that. Thank you. That's all it is. It's not because there's no. If you really think about it, there is no villain in this picture. I mean, not like Alien, not like in Terminator. No, the real villainy is just the unscary side of humanity.
That's the interpretation, right? So when that water snake goes in there, it's not there to try to take the warhead. It's sort of trying to communicate. Like I think it's trying to say that you shouldn't be messing with these type of machines. Like this can destroy the world, and that's really kind of the message I kind of get through the peace of these creatures that live down there, is that they're not there to create war or anything like that. Go ahead.
I kind of got the feeling that like maybe they lost their planet due to that kind of technology.
Yeah, possibility. But yeah, obviously, we're the viewers, we're watching, so we know this creature really doesn't mean harm. But Coffee, he's already lost it, so he's thinking the worst possible scenario. He's like, "Oh, it's trying to go for the warhead. We can't let that happen." So that's obviously where it leads him further down the dark path, basically. Yeah. But then we get this other turn after Coffee ends up imploding down that trench. And he knew his fate was there, but then comes the problem between the Brigmans because they have damage to their sub. It's leaking very much. It would take, I think they said 20 minutes or something to get to swim to the rig, but they only have one suit. So Mrs. Brigman says, "Well, I'll drown, and then you get me back as fast as you can because you're the best swimmer. And then you revive me," and that's the plan. Like, because the water's so cold, it's going to slow her heartbeat down, which was what her thinking was.
The hypothermia.
Yeah.
And there is actual medical science behind that.
Yeah. So, but of course, Bud's like, "Oh, we can't do that. It's crazy." And plus, again, this is where you learn this early on that despite their tension about their divorce, like, he really loves his wife. Like, he threw away his ring into the toilet and grabbed it back out. Like, he still loves his wife a lot. And she's a little bit slower to come around, but she eventually does, and we find that out later. But so yeah, they end up doing this plan, which is nuts. But he does because it's the only way they're going to get out. He doesn't want to leave her behind, so he goes ahead with it and gets it there. And then, they go through all this to get her there. And he's having a hard time getting her revived, and finally he's like, no. He just won't take no for an answer. Starts hammering her, calls her a bitch, and eventually she does come back out of it. But the other guys are ready to call it.
They did so many takes to that scene, and it was so intense. The actor she lost it and actually stormed off set and told Cameron basically he was going to have to finish the shot without her.
Yeah, that's actually what's crazy about that is there's actual footage of that happening where the camera just goes off and you hear, Barry just like, it's like it's that moment, and that moment when you see the point of view of her looking up, her dead eyes, she was not there. That was just the rest of the rest of the cast, But yeah, that shows how intense and how like
Because
it was
like
like this.
he was actually slapping her for real in the scene, and that's after so many takes of that is when she snapped.
Okay, so she was upset about just not getting the scene right or having to take the hits or
Like
whatever.
just having to take so many takes of it.
You got to remember, James Cameron is a perfectionist. I mean, I give him that. He's like,
if the scene's that intense and you're physically slapped or physically, and then you've got to do reshoot after reshoot. At the end of the day, we're human, we're bodies. It's going to take a toll.
It got
obviously
like the pressure of filming got so bad at one point the entire cast pretty much snapped and like collectively destroyed their trailers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So even though this is one of his best films, not many people like you say like to talk about it.
Ed Harris was quoted in saying he wouldn't even do promotion for this. He was quoted in saying, "I don't want to talk about it and I never will."
What was his issue?
Just because of how stressful the shooting was every day. Because like I said, there was one point during filming when it was either from the hotel to the set or from the set to the hotel. He just pulled over and just started shaking and crying uncontrollably.
Isn't that weird though, how some of the movies we really love throughout history, like as great as they are, but you hear all these horror stories behind the scenes, and it's like there's a part of you that says, that's a lot of abuse for actors to go through, but then there's like, in the end it paid off. Like that scene that we're talking about is very effective. He doesn't want to let go of his wife, and he'll do anything he can to bring her back.
There was even
Go ahead. Oh, did he freeze?
He's
froze, I think.
I was going to say, I thought that was me.
Hypothermia took over.
That's what.
Hypothermia, right? I'm going to bitch slap him and get him back.
No, but no, that's the thing right there. It's he, like so many others, they're perfectionists and they're trying to get, because you see the raw, because that's the thing about him. He likes to get the real rawness of the emotion. He's showing that nothing is perfect. He's showing what real life really is.
And that's what happens a lot. But you hear all these horror stories sometimes from these actors and actresses where it's like, I really wanted to work with this guy, but when I did, he was just such an asshole. Like it was just so difficult. But then it's like one of those movies that you actually really like, and it's like, it pays off, but then you're like, at what expense? Yeah. So, because sometimes you'll hear these people like that movie will go on to do well, but then the actress is like, "Well, yeah, I'll never work with him again, though."
And it's sad knowing that kind of routine happens. I mean, I know for a fact that the guys on the television show Chips, Eric Estrada and their Wilcox, on screen on television they were dynamite. They had great chemistry. They had wonderful chemistry, but behind the scenes, they hated each other's guts. I'm just like, damn. It's like you would think, like I say, the way they have the chemistry on screen, it's like it should translate off screen, but didn't happen that way. And that's kind of the same way with some of these films. They really do have.
Is it Nick? Is it the same with what's his name? Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte, who did 48 Hours.
I don't know if I've heard anything about that. I mean, from what
apparently they really didn't get on. They couldn't. But
it could have been
the only reason Eddie Murphy signed up to do the second one is due to the fact of the amount of money they offered him. Because I don't like the dude, but I'm willing to do it for the money.
Well, remember it had a bigger budget than the original one, so it wouldn't make sense that would be.
Yeah, apparently Nick Nolte just was just very, very hard to work with.
I'm pretty sure you heard that story between Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey on Batman Ever. Jim Carrey pretty much said that Tommy Lee Jones told him, was like, you're such a prick. I can't stand work. I was like, wow, okay. I mean, that's
Oh, was that in Batman Forever?
Batman
Yeah.
Forever. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
like, okay.
Yeah. But the way I look at it,
To
that's
be
the kind of
fair,
actor
Carrey's
Jim
character was
Carrey
much
is.
better.
Yeah. Like, at the end of the kind of campiness that they brought to Batman Forever, that's the kind of film Jim Carrey would do, where Tommy Lee Jones is known for being a serious, very, an actor. But at the same time, I always found it weird that Tommy Lee Jones took on the role of Two-Face, because I thought it's not like, because even when he does Men in Black, he's a very straightforward character. He's very
Yeah.
but then in Batman Forever, he's trying to mix it up and be like funny, and it just
Yeah,
didn't work for me.
yeah, he wasn't very good Two-Face, and I mean, it was just not the kind of role for him.
Yeah.
You can easily say that was just miscasting, but I mean, but yeah.
Yeah, because if you look at even like Aaron Eckhart in The Dark Knight, perfect casting for me is
Yeah.
and he's meant to be this corrupt official whose like morals are twisted against him because of like he's past and stuff like that. And obviously they didn't bring any of that into Batman Forever. They basically made like it's just a campy episode of the 1960s show, which is
Yep.
another reason why Tim Burton wouldn't return to the third one, because I wanted to do it completely different to his films, and that's another reason why Michael Keaton didn't return.
Yeah.
But anyway, Anthony, we'll get back. Continue what you were saying before. You started. We needed to get the E-fib out
Before you drowned.
There was even another like incident during filming where they were in one of the underwater sets and the power went out. And Michael Biehn actually had to swim to the top because he was running low on air. And like it was so dark, he didn't know whether he was going up or down.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Hmm.
But what happens next after all of that?
So once they revive her, now the plan is because the submersible that Coffee was in is down in the trench, and it's close to where the NTIs are. Now, granted, they don't know exactly where the NTIs are; they just know it's down there somewhere. So Bud's going to try out this suit with the water, the fluid that you can breathe underwater with, which will allow him to go to depths that are like 17,000 feet down, which is insane. So he's got to go down there and try to like disarm the warhead. And so they have this plan. They're going to give him some weights, and he's got this gauge for his tank, and he's got his little pack, and so he's got some flares. So they let him go down, and of course, they explained to him that once you start going deeper and deeper, you're going to start feeling the cold and the pressure, because it's still, despite the water being in the fluid, it's still very deep, so it's still going to affect your psychosis.
Yeah, it's like a one-way ticket.
Yeah, and so their plan is that he'll go down there and disarm it and then drop the weights and then come back up. But he's already thinking ahead, because the way that it works down there is it's very hard to get from point A to point B. I actually forgot at the beginning when they were on the rig that they were 22 miles from where the sub was. So like they had this little thing that's pulling the rig through the water. I totally forgot about that. I was like, how did they get close to the sub? And then they showed it. So it takes a while for them to get to point A. And then even when you're by yourself in the water, just in a suit, it takes a while because you can't swim as fast.
And like
they don't have
I wouldn't say fun fact if you were Ed Harris, but that like fluid, they didn't actually have him breathing it, but apparently like it actually irritated his eyes and like made them swell.
Yeah,
I bet. Yeah,
because the whole situation with him, the breathing water thing, liquid, that was all simulated. That was not real. That wasn't him doing that. He had.
Although the technology is real, but deemed it too risky.
My guess is it was like some sort of thin thing in front of the shield that was filled with the liquid that they did
the shots, like they actually had him, like when he was acclimating to it, he actually kept his mouth shut, but there was liquid in there with him exposed.
Right. Mm-hmm. So he gets down there, and of course the problem that you run into is even with the flares, it's dark as fuck. Of course, he says he sees lights. but they get the heartwarming part where he's kind of like once he's cut the wire, which he had to take the guess at because the colors were all the same with the flare, you couldn't really tell. So he gets lucky, cuts the right one, and he says, "I'm still here." And they're like, "Okay, well, drop your weights and come back." Well, at first they asked him how much area is left, and he has 5 minutes. And they're like, "Well, it took him 20 minutes to get down there," but he's already thought ahead of that. He's already knows that as Anthony put it,
it's a one-way mission.
Yeah, he says, I knew this was going one way. You know how to do it. It says "love you, wife," which is really nice, and she's like freaking out now instead of the reverse where she was drowned and he was trying to bring her back. Now she has to come up to grips that her husband's not going to come back, or does he?
And we have to remind ourselves too that Bud was not going to let anyone get sacrificed anyway, because he said early in the film when they get recruited for this mission to begin with, he says, when it comes to the safety of these people, there's me and then there's God. And he's like, I'm not going to sacrifice anyone that doesn't need to when I can make sure that they see. You got to remember, he is the so-called captain of that vessel. And the whole purpose of someone in charge like that is to make sure to maintain the safety of his crew, and it's like he's not going to sacrifice anyone else. So he's going to make sure, because they already lost 7 people during this event. So it's like, I'm going to make sure that it's just me. And if I die, it's for a good cause.
Yeah.
So he's down there and he's just going to chill and let his air run out. Like he's kind of pretty much said, okay, this is it, So what do you need to say? And then probably about a few minutes later, we get this lights coming up that everyone else has seen throughout the film, Miss Brigman and all them. And you'll probably, And so they come up and reach out, and it's like almost like an angel in some ways.
Yeah.
It grabs them, and they go to this ship or this. I keep thinking it's like Atlantis. That's kind of how I look at it. But
that's how I looked at it.
Yeah. So so this thing is, it's fast, so it's taken, but his air's running out and everything else, and it takes him down one of these tubes of this place. And finally, when it drops him, the water parts. So they have the ability, obviously, to control water and how it mitigates and runs around, because they did that earlier with the little water snake. So they can manipulate it whatever way they want. So they part it and give him basically a pocket of air. So he takes off his helmet, and where Anthony said, it's probably one of those moments where you had the fluid in there for real, and then he just takes the helmet off and it all dumps out. And so finally, he finally gets gets some air back in his lungs after puking up the water. And he sees the little angels through the water where this parted, and, he's like, howdy, in his little cowboy attitude. And that's when they kind of like, in order to communicate, they can only do like either facial expressions or through things they've seen. So they saw somehow how he texted back to the surface or back to the rig his last words to Mrs. Brigman, and he kind of understood at that point. And that's apparently there's like an extended version of this where it tells us some other stuff, but I kind of like this version.
You basically see they have like skyscraper mile wide tidal waves coming towards like every major city.
Right.
Yeah, this was the scene. These were the scenes that the majority of was cut out of the final film, and it's.
I prefer this version. I'll be honest. To see.
Well, me too. Yeah, and the funny thing is, like I say, when I didn't see it, when I saw it in the theater, I was like, man, it seemed like I would have loved to see that, but
the other version's more political. So the other version, the extended edition or the extra edition, is like
I would think
the scenes are connected to like the Soviets. It's more about it's basically more about like the aliens, and then you learn more like the connection with the Soviets and America, and then the reason the aliens don't believe we should survive, that we're just a war-bidden race.
Well, it's more like they don't want to see us fighting one another. They feel like, why are you such as higher intelligence, and y'all fighting one another?
Because during the extended edition, during this scene with Ed Harris, he goes, "How do you know about us?" And then you see like an image. You get shown images
War.
of
Yeah, montage. Yeah.
and like all the battles, and then obviously he goes, "So why are you doing it?" And then how he gets saved, he talks to them, and he basically shows how much he loves his wife, and then they realise that that's why they're a loving, peaceful race. That they're not all war hating people.
It
But
took one.
that's why this version works better, because you've spent all this time setting up how peaceful they are, how they care about life, and then to go and sit there and say, "Oh yeah, well they're going to end the human race because we can't stop ourselves from destroying ourselves anyway." So I kind of like this version way better.
Yeah,
Uh,
me
I
too.
get that, but I kind of like the extended cut where it was an act of selfishness that saved the humanity.
Yeah.
yeah, but it kind of still goes against what we've seen previously with the aliens, because like, it's one thing if the aliens have shown like some sort of aggression at any point in the other part of the film, because then you can sit there and say they're kind of anti-hero sort of. But because we throughout the most of the film we're getting this idea that they're not aggressive or angry, that kind of would ruin it for me, as far as like
Yeah,
showing.
Or you could
I agree.
maybe you could kind of argue it that their intention never was to destroy the human race, but they were always going to stop it. But they just sent those waves as like a message, like, "Look, this is what you're doing to yourselves."
Yeah.
Learn from
True, but
learn from your actions, basically. Yeah.
And here's the
but
other thing about this, because I'm going to wrap it up here a little bit. But so obviously he's down there and he's communicating with them the best way he can through his text. And up at the rig, everyone pretty much thinks that he's dead, like they've already written him off. But up top, and on top of the water, the storm clears. So part of me wonders if they have a way to manipulate weather, because it just all of a sudden decided to go bye-bye. And that's when the top ships are able to communicate with the rig again. And they start, talking about how they need some hose air come down, all the yada yada. And then all of a sudden they get a text from Bud saying, "Hey, Mr. Bigman, back on the air." And then they all get happy, and he says, like, "I met a new friend down here." And that's when shit gets real. Like all of a sudden you just hear this rumbling, and everyone's like, "Hold on to yourself." And the ships up top, all of a sudden we start seeing these pillars, which we saw in the picture you showed, Kevin, there a little bit. Of this thing. It turns out this is like some sort of craft. It's not just like a city, but it's almost like a huge ass craft. Yeah, so it ends up coming up, and it just basically sits on top of the water. But all the ships and the oil rig is up there, and they, obviously they did something to them so they didn't have to decompress, because they would have been dead. Usually it takes 3 weeks for them to do that from coming that deep, but they're aliens, so they can do just about anything.
yes,
The thing that makes me think to myself, because I told it because my mom and me went to go see this film in its original run, and I kind of mentioned to her, it's like, they seem like they're, almost godlike in that sense, but it's like, well, and she kind of says like, well, they're not gods, they're just these entities that can, affect certain things, certain technology, certain things around them, So I had to kind of rethink about it. It's like, okay, they're just these not so much benign, but they're just these kind of creatures who are not
they are jellyfish fairies.
basically, and they're not. Like I say, they don't like seeing seeing another species harm themselves. And I think we brought this up. Maybe from where they were before, they allowed their technology or whatever to destroy them, and they didn't want that reoccurrence on this planet.
But
Well,
I'm like
totally
Anubis. I like how this film ended better with they didn't show the tidal waves heading towards the city. They didn't show like the political side of like more involved with the Russians, like the Soviets. It kept it quite a nice. But I like the plot the way it sat, and I like how like right at the end it gave you hope for peace. But like not just between Russia and like the world, but of these now this introduction of these alien beings that now, freely of their choice, have decided to introduce themselves to the human race.
Right.
Because one human showed that he loved his wife that much, he was willing to sacrifice himself for them.
It only
Which
takes one.
go back to kind of like what Walter said about them being kind of like gods. I think I kind of agree with you in some ways, just because they have all this power to do a lot of different things that we can't do. And at any point they could have went and stopped coffee from trying to get down to them, like, but they were kind of like watching and seeing how it was going to play out, allowing humans to kind of dictate how it was going to, that moment was going to play out. So you think of like Zeus and the mythology behind that, and Perseus, and how he would allow his son, despite giving him help here and there, but allow him to kind of dictate his own future and his fate. So that's sort of like what they were doing. If one thing will go on Anthony's, in terms of his extended, like for the extended version, is that does help you understand Coffee's mentality a little bit more, because it does deal with the tensions between Russia and America. So if you had that knowledge there, then you can see why Coffee was freaking the fuck out as much as he was, because he was, as you said earlier, wanting to save his own people, save the humans, and save America. So his mentality is wired differently. But I think the only way that would work for the extended version is to kind of mix it up in the beginning of the film, where we might see those aliens be a little bit more aggressive, in some other way.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, gentlemen, great film. For me, it's probably one of James Cameron's best outside of Terminator 2. Final thoughts and ratings. We'll start with Anthony Jordan.
Just a great film. It's got a very, either whichever version you choose to watch, it's got a very just positive, hopeful message, great characters, and we've bragged on the cast this whole movie, but got to throw one more out there, even though it was a small role, Daniel Stern.
Oh, yes.
I'll give this movie a 10 out of 10. Is it my favorite Cameron movie? No, but in his films, I would put it below Terminator 2 and Aliens, but above Terminator, Titanic, True Lies, and I'm not even going to mention the other films he did.
He's got that water favorite films. These little water babies.
As I call them, the blue people.
Right, we'll go to Mr. Jedi Granville next.
Okay, well, as I told you before, this film is by far my favorite of James Cameron. This, like I say, and not in no amount of saying that T2 or even Aliens is not up there, because they are, because they have their own flavor, but they're more horror action. Aliens horror action, whereas Terminator is more sci-fi action. And but both still have messages embedded in them, just like this one does. But this one has a more, it's like kind of study who we are as a species, study us who we are as individuals. And like I say, and I'm glad that I got to see the film in whole, in a sense, because it lets me know that have Cameron's kind of like let the blue people affect him too much, like some other blue pill, and maybe he would have been, still on the rise. And he is on the rise, but he's still doing things with something that's more different. Because, to me, it seemed like he would have done something different after Avatar, do something completely different, because he's got something more than Tank. But unfortunately, he's sticking to the blue people. So for right now,
apparently he has got plans to do a war film next.
Well, I couldn't care less.
As long as the soldiers aren't blue.
Yeah, but to give ratings to this film, because like I say, this film is my all-time favorite of James Cameron, is definitely getting a full 10 for me.
Nice. My co-host, Mr. DJ Anubis.
Well, this is no Piranha 2 The Spawning, but
There's
It's
nobody
not
knows special
not my
imagination.
favorite Cameron film. You got stuff like Terminator 2, True Lies. Those are just, those are films like Aliens is up there. So like it'd be very hard for me to put that above those. But this is also a different type of movie than those. So it's not the same type of action packed that you would. This is more thriller and drama. So with that said, there's no arguing the early days of James Cameron is like filled with greatness, like just really great
Yes.
directing. And this is still a 10 out of 10, like just for what it is.
Yeah. As for me, I'm pretty much with you guys. I consider this one of my favourite James Cameron films. The early era of James Cameron, it will always be the best. I think Aliens is still my favourite James Cameron film.
Yeah.
It'll probably be Aliens, it then probably be T2, then The Abyss, and then potentially True Lies. But this still gets a 10 out of 10 because for me, like I said earlier on when we first began, this for me is his more Steven Spielberg-ish film. This feels like it could have been a co-collaboration between the two of them because the story has like that, like we've talked about, has those elements of hope, discovery, and all of those are like things he had never previously visited in past films. Like you see, he was all about action and sci-fi or horror and sci-fi. This was science fiction, drama, thriller, but it had a much different tone and message. And then later on, a similar film that would carry this on would be, say, Titanic. But yes, still 10 out of 10. One of my favourite films, and like I said, I only have a handful of 4Ks, and this was one that I chose to purchase on 4K because I was so interested to see how it had adapted in the 4K. I thought was quite well done. But Mr. DJ Anubis, have you got your pick for the next retro classic movie show?
I do actually, and so I'm gonna send it to you right now.
Silver Streak.
It's actually in your bottom of your thing there.
Oh yes, this one's gonna be a good one.
Ah, nice.
I have never seen a single Mad Max movie.
Right, you are bored.
I'm holding my tongue on that. I'm not saying nothing. You're not like.
Oh my god!
That is an excellent choice, my friend.
Thank
Excellent choice.
Remember, I
While
grew
we're
up
here,
without cable, so it's not like I had easy access.
Right. That's what I say. We're not going to get hard.
I'll tell you
Yeah,
what.
but I mean, did word of mouth never come about with that with you though? Like you've seen a lot of stuff though. I mean, it isn't like you haven't seen anything. So I'm just kind of curious. Like, were you always aware of Mad Max and just
I
never
was
saw it?
aware of it, but again, it was one of the films like I never had like easy access to. It was never on TV. We didn't have cable, so the cable channels weren't an option, and like the local video store didn't even have any of them to rent.
Well, Mad Max 2 is my favourite of all Mad Max films, so I'm going to have fun with this one.
So yeah.
But since we're talking to Mr. DJ News, what is coming to the Metal Tavern Radio?
So right now, next week, I'm going to do another species spotlight. I don't know the tarantula species yet that I'm going to do, but I'll figure that out. But I'll probably be doing that early week, and then hoping to have my review of a movie that I am in called Spirit Board: Doorway to Death that I had a chance to watch with my wife. So,
you finally got it.
Yeah, so I'm gonna review that, and then I'll probably be interviewing director Sean Wright and one or more of the actresses or actors in the movie.
Nice. So is this the one with you and Tony in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So yeah.
Nice.
That's pretty much what I have right now.
Oh, cool. Anthony Jordan, what's coming to your channel?
Well, right now it obviously won't pop up on screen, but if I click on a minimize screen on my computer, I'll bring up my video editing software, and I have my review for Godzilla 1985, so the Return of Godzilla-thon is continuing. I just need to add some film clips and a few other things in and process the review, and it's good to go.
Nice. Mr. Jedi Granville, what's coming to Jedi Granville Productions?
Well, coming tomorrow, I got a little fun little thing that hopefully that some of you might be able to join on. But it's my top 10 favorite monster wars of the cinema in the past, however long it has been, And this is just excluding Godzilla because I think 9 out of 10, his roar would probably be number one at best. But anyone like myself, or I got Mark Justice coming on, I think he got someone coming on there too. We're going to be discussing, our favorite sounding monster roars ever in movies, and everything. And then that Sunday, I'll have the pleasure of you joining me, Kevin, on talking about one of Steven Seagal's best films, Executive Decision. Which, when we get into the mix of it, the crux of it, we'll say that we'll know why it's his best role.
So if you blink, you might miss the reason why.
Yeah.
Cough and you'll miss the reason why.
Yeah, really, you'll miss it. But the next following Saturday, hopefully, Mr. and anyone can join on with this one too. I'll be discussing Outland, the 1981 film directed by Peter Hyams and starring Sean Connery. It's basically a sci-fi version of High Noon. Professor.
Mhm.
I mean, Daniel Miller is supposed to be on there with me, but who knows? He might have something going on that he might not be able to join. But anyone can join me for that one. That'd be cool.
Nice. As for me in the entertainment headquarters, I will be at some point tomorrow be putting up my review for the Masters of the Universe. Because I'm going out with my brother who's loved that show since he was a kid, so we'll be checking that out. And I'll try and get a review up as soon as I can. After the review, I know next week on Friday the 12th, you and me, my good friend, Mr. Jedi Granville, are getting together for the next Kaiju Connections to talk about Kronos.
I was going to say something, yeah.
Yeah. So that's going to be you and me and potentially Daniel Miller. And I don't know if Anthony Jordan's ever seen that film. If I can find it, I'll send you a link. And of course, you can join me if you choose. And then on the 18th of June, it's the next Into the Darkness, where we're going to be talking about the Hatchet franchise, which I've just finished the last one. It's been
actually,
an
I
interesting
just started the last one. I just watched the first three last night. So
I still got to get through 2 and 4. I mean 3 and 4.
I tell you what, though, I'll say more when we do it. But 3, man, with all that cast, is so good. I love
you said
that
the Burrows. You said
Hatchet.
Hatchet. Oh, Hatchet. I thought you said about the Burrows. Okay.
Then on the 19th, this is me biggie of the month. We're doing the Steven Spielberg franchise special. And, hopefully Disclosure Day comes out. I'm hearing, I think, like all you guys are hearing nothing but good buzz about Disclosure Day. So obviously there will be a review for Disclosure Day coming from me that week. And then that following weekend, we're going to be talking all things Steven Spielberg. And I do eventually want to get with my good friend DJ Nubis to do what we were meant to do, which is the Hellboy special. Don't know if that'll happen this month, but we'll try and figure it out. And we'll also try and figure out when we're going to do the next Cinematic Synergy on the Metal Tavern Radio.
Nice.
But Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. This has been a blast as always. Please give a like, share, and subscribe to Mr. JJ Anubis and the Metal Tavern Radio. Please give a like, share, and subscribe to Anthony Jordan's Movies and Gaming. And of course, give a like, share, and subscribe to Jedi Granville Productions. All of these guys have great content, great channels. Please give them a shout out. And if you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe to the entertainment headquarters. But this, thank you. This has been the entertainment headquarters. This has been the Retro Classic Movie Show. Keep on enjoying your movies. Keep on enjoying all things entertainment, and we'll catch us all at the next one.